Hey there, this is your teacher, Mr. H, and you're watching History in a Hoodie. Today's episode is about Native American removal from Georgia, where we will learn all about what led to the Cherokee and Creek tribes being kicked out of the state. I can't wait to find out, so let's get this show started. What are we learning about today? The standard for today's lesson asks the students to describe the role of William McIntosh in the removal of the Creek from Georgia. Also, we will analyze how key people including John Ross, John Marshall, and Andrew Jackson, and events like the Dahlonega Gold Rush and the Worcester v. Georgia Supreme Court case led to the removal of the Cherokees from Georgia on the Trail of Tears. Before we start, let's go over some vocabulary for today's lesson. Andrew Jackson was the U.S. president who advocated Indian removal. William McIntosh was the Creek chief who sold remaining Creek territory to the U.S. The treaties of Indian Springs were treaties between the U.S. and Creek, drastically shrinking Creek territory in Georgia. Worcester v. Georgia was the Supreme Court case determining Cherokee's right to independence and prohibiting the government from taking the land away. The Dahlonega Gold Rush was the discovery of gold in North Georgia, which led to the removal of the Cherokee from the region. John Ross was the Cherokee chief who fought against the Indian Removal Act. John Marshall was the Supreme Court Chief Justice who supported Cherokee nationhood. The Trail of Tears was the forced removal of the Cherokee from Georgia. Georgia's current territory includes almost 60,000 square miles of land, but, as we know, former British citizens were not the first people on that land. When Oglethorpe and the English settlers arrived and founded Savannah, there were two major tribal groups, the Cherokee and Creek tribes. As the Georgia colony and state expanded, these two groups would be pushed further and further away from their homeland, leading to conflict. The Creek Indians controlled territory in the Piedmont and Coastal Plains regions for hundreds of years, but they began to see their land in Georgia shrink and shrink in the late 1700s to early 1800s. During the Revolution, the Creek tribes chose to side with the British, which later on caused a very negative relationship with the new state of Georgia. As Georgia expanded, some Creeks wanted to fight to keep their own territory, while others hoped to resolve the land dispute peacefully. A conflict between these differing opinions within the Creek tribe itself was ended by the American military, led by future President Andrew Jackson, who, it seems, would be getting just his first taste of superiority over the native tribes. The Creek were forced to sign the Treaty of Indian Springs, which gave up all the land east of the Ocmulgee River, almost 22 million acres of land to Georgia. The United States government searched for an answer to the removal of the Creeks entirely from Georgia, but they wanted to do so peacefully instead of risking a full native uprising and war. The government approached several Creek chiefs to buy the remainder of Creek land. Several turned the government down, but it only took one yes. Chief William McIntosh did not have the power or respect of the whole Creek nation to make a deal with the U.S. government, but the government didn't care. McIntosh and a few other Creek chiefs agreed to sell the remainder of the Creek land, the Second Treaty of Indian Springs, for $200,000 without the entire tribe's consent. This deal was viewed as a bribe by the majority of the Creek nation, and McIntosh was the corrupt leader. McIntosh was executed by his own tribe by shooting and stabbing him repeatedly. Nevertheless, the U.S. government saw that the Creek were completely removed from Georgia territory as a result of the deal. The Cherokee tribes lived mostly in northern Georgia, in the Piedmont, Blue Ridge, Appalachian Plateau, and Ridge and Valley regions. These people were an extremely advanced society that, for the most part, got along with white settlers. The Cherokee society traded with the British, later the Georgians, had their own written language, developed a legal system, and produced a newspaper. Their society may have been accepted in the young United States, until gold was discovered in the North Georgia mountains. The Dahlonega Gold Rush of 1828 led to more and more American citizens moving into northern Georgia in search of riches. further pushing out the Cherokee. So what? How can conflict between societies cause change? The gold rush led to President Andrew Jackson signing the Indian Removal Act, which the Cherokee appeared to be exempted from removal because of a Supreme Court decision. Cherokee Chief John Ross argued in front of the Supreme Court in Worcester v. Georgia that the Cherokee were an independent nation and not subject to Georgia's laws. The Cherokee would win this decision, but being independent from the U.S. also meant that there were no laws preventing the president and the military from sweeping them out. The Cherokee were forcibly relocated to the Oklahoma Territory with U.S. Army escort. Nearly 1,000 miles away from their native homeland, the journey was extremely rough. The Trail of Tears, as it would become known, was so undersupplied that over 4,000 Cherokee died on the trek. President Andrew Jackson and Supreme Court Chief Justice John Marshall played major parts in the Indian removal period, on opposite sides of the debate. Jackson was determined to remove all tribes out of the Southeast. Some suggest this is part of their history of siding with the British during wars against the U.S. Others suggest this is part of his intense racial prejudice against the American Indians. John Marshall led the favorable decision in Worcester v. Georgia, supporting the Cherokee's rights to nationhood. Jackson obviously ignored the court's decision in removing the Cherokee, and is famously quoted as saying, "John Marshall has made the decision, now let him enforce it." Now what? What am I going to do with this information? Another motivational poster that shows up in my classroom and several other teachers' classrooms is one that says, "Self-control means knowing you can, but deciding you won't." Before De Soto's expedition in the 1500s, Native American tribes greatly outnumbered the number of Europeans in the New World, hands down. Once the British colonies became established, and later on when the U.S. had formed, the number of natives on the continent had become significantly less, and soon enough the population of American citizens outnumbered the population of native people in the region. No one doubted for a second that Andrew Jackson had the ability to dominate the native people in Georgia and elsewhere, and removing those people was the easiest path forward for America. Less conflict, more riches and land. Just because the path forward is easy doesn't mean it's the right path. When you're angry with a sibling, friend, or classmate, it's very easy to punch them in the face. But we all know that isn't the best response at all. Andrew Jackson had an easy path, eliminate the problem, or a more difficult path, peacefully cohabitate together. The problem with choosing the easy path is that it demonstrates exactly how weak-willed of a person or leader you are. Andrew Jackson doesn't deserve much respect from us at all for his genocidal actions toward the Native American tribes, nor does anyone else who takes the easy path deserve our respect at all. Wow, so learning about native removal is really important for us to understand. I'm glad we learned it today. Are you ready for some review questions? Why was William McIntosh, a Creek chief, murdered by his own people? The intent of the Indian Removal Act was to... The discovery of gold in Dahlonega ultimately resulted in which of the following? Worcester v. Georgia was the U.S. Supreme Court case that ruled that Cherokee land could not be taken away by state or federal government. The Trail of Tears was the removal of the Cherokee Nation from the state of Georgia beginning in 1838. Many of the Cherokees died of hunger and exposure to the extreme winter conditions and disease on their journey. Who was the president that ordered their removal? I hope all of you learned a lot from today's episode of History in a Hoodie about the removal of Creek and Cherokee tribes from Georgia. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Just kidding, I don't care about that stuff, But do make sure you study this lesson. Bye now.